Welcome to the DMF podcast, where you're going to get to hear conversations with community leaders, charity spotlights, and information on upcoming DMF events. I'm your host, Whitney Isaacson, and today I got to sit down with Naomi Erkenbrack. Naomi is a licensed clinical social worker at Valley Christian Counseling, and she gets to provide support for parents and children in their relationships and help them understand who God made them to be. Today, Naomi shared with me about how trauma and attachment affect our emotional intelligence. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Naomi today. Let's get into it. Welcome, Naomi, to the podcast. We are so excited to just have you and your ball of energy with us today. We are just so pumped. We've loved working with you in the past, and it's just always a joy to be around you. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting to be here.
Yes. So we are going to be diving into why you're passionate in what you do. So as a clinical social worker, and you work at Valley Christian Counseling.
Yes.
Can you tell us what you're most passionate about and why you do what you do?
It's hard to pick one. So I'm going to pick something incorporating. I would say that originally my passion was evoked in working at the Village Family Service Center back getting my bachelor's degree in social work. And I was introduced to family-based systems. And the family systems model was like so eye-opening to me. It made so much sense. We don't live in a vacuum. We live in relationships. And so understanding how a person works within their family and within their environment, how that shapes them to understand who they are and what their purpose is and their meaning is in life, it made so much sense to me. So I think it goes all the way back to there. And that's where I was first introduced to attachment as well. And it totally hit home for me. Like, this made so much sense to me that if we don't have security within ourselves, we won't be able to offer anything to the world because we'll be constantly self-absorbed then, right? So that, I would say, that was my original passion. And what that's evolved into has been a passion to help people understand who God made them to be and how he wants to use who they naturally are into the world to do important things, and how the things that happen in their life, the hardships in their story, are not meant to make them fall apart, are not meant to devalue them, are not even meant to set them back. They're actually meant to equip them for the life that they are called to live. And so I get really passionate about helping people understand your story is not a bad story. And I promise you, if we go through that, I will help you to see that story through a different perspective. And you will come to see that all of the things you've gone through, even the things you're most ashamed of, are actually things that have equipped you to be very powerful and impactful in your relationships and in the world. And that is probably the thing I get most excited about, when people can see their story through that different lens, and that security is built within them, and they've now internalized a healthy attachment, and they have something to bring out into relationships to others.
Wow, I'm so excited to unpack all of this. That is just awesome. And you can tell that you just thrive in what you do, and like God has placed you exactly where you should be. And
I love it. I absolutely love every day I'm there.
Yes. So as a social worker at Valley Christian Counseling, so kind of speak to, who are you actually working with? At what point do people come and see you? And the work and the passion you talk about, how does that look in the clinic?
Sure. So, my training is in social work and marriage and family therapy. And so I tend to see all ages, but within more of a context of family, parent-child relationships. So I would say the people who are coming to see me, a lot of them are people who have kids and are coming in with issues with their children. Also, my area of specialty is attachment and trauma. So I tend to see a lot of adoptive families, kids that have come out of the foster system, have adopted, or having a hard time connecting or attaching, that have a lot of behavioral struggles, emotional regulation struggles. So a lot of my practice tends to be focused on trauma and attachment. And since I've been there for 2 decades now, I've seen people through the lifespan development, and that has moved into working more with adults as well. So sometimes I'm working with parents, sometimes I'm working with kids that have now grown into adulthood on that identity and purpose. So I see the wide spectrum, but people are going to be seeking me out because they want somebody more family systems oriented.
So you kind of work like from the beginning with child development, but then it almost seems like you work backwards also when you see adults and you have to like unpack all that stuff.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And I think what people don't understand, nobody really explains to us that throughout our childhood, we're looking to an attachment figure to help us find security in ourselves. And what a healthy adult looks like is not looking for your security in an attachment figure anymore. Nobody understands that. So then they're looking to their marriage or to their partnerships or their friendships to fill that need for security. And their partners are falling short. Like no one is meeting that need. And nobody explains to them, oh, when you get to adulthood, that attachment should be internalized. And now you are finding your security within yourself, within who God made you to be. So it's all internalized. So you're in charge of your feelings. You're in charge of your security. And that is so eye-opening for people. So we do a lot of working on those wounded parts of myself, those younger parts of myself. So it's interesting. I'm doing that family systems work, but in an internalized way with an adult.
So when you think about that for a young developing brain, how do you instill healthy attachment?
Yeah, that's a big question. I would say a hallmark of instilling attachment is attunement. So that is teaching. It's starting with the parent, not with the child. The parent proves to be faithful, and that's what helps the child receive the love and security and attachment from the parent. And so a lot of it is helping the parent to understand the child that they're working with, because everybody's different and their stories are different and how they've experienced life up to this point that they're with this parent. I mean, especially in adoptive cases. So understanding the behavior of their child, the temperament of their child, the perspective of their child, attuning into those cues and becoming a safe person for their child. So that's a lot of what therapy looks like. And that's why in my treatment, parents are almost always in the therapy session the entire time, because I am modeling for them getting to know their child. And then I'm also helping them to attune into their child and respond to their child. So that's a lot of what a typical session is going to look like.
So for any parents that are listening, what are those practical things that you might be doing in your office to help them get to know their child?
A lot of reflective listening. So hearing what their child says, repeating it back to them to make sure that they're understanding, is this what you mean? This is what I heard you say. This is what it means to me. Is that what you mean? So that attitude of curiosity rather than one of education or lecturing first, but one of like, hey, I just want to check, like, am I getting that right? Is that what you mean when you say that? I want to understand. And I want to make sense of that. Make sure I'm hearing you right. And then clarification skills of, okay, so when you say this, this is what you mean, but this is what it sounds like to me. This is how I take it. That's why I look sad, or that's why I look frustrated. I think it means something different to me than it does to you. And maybe that's how it meant to your friend. Maybe they took it differently than you took it, or your teacher. And so teaching them that how they think is not bad or wrong, but it might be different. And that happens in those conversations with a parent, understanding their child, but then also showing them that there's a different way that might be interpreted as well. So we do a lot of communication skills and a lot of attunement skills.
At what age do you start communicating to your child like that, in that reflective, like very...
Infancy.
Wow.
I mean, I remember I have twins that were born 3 months early. And I remember being in the living room talking when I was doing anything. Mommy's going to the bathroom right now. I'll be right back. And my voice continues. They don't have object permanence yet. They believe that if they can't see me, I don't exist. And that's when they're crying, right? So if they hear my voice, they know I'm still present. And I would say it even went back to the NICU. When my babies were in the NICU for 3 months, I made tapes of me reading to them and singing to them, and the NICU nurses would play them. And so I think and even in utero, you're talking to your child. They're getting to know your voice. And so those pieces are all pieces of emotional regulation. I think the other key thing was talking about my own feelings. So when I'm frustrated, using the word. When I'm stressed, using the word. Oh, mom is so stressed right now. I really got to get things figured out, or I got to put this stuff away. This mess makes me feel a little bit anxious. And as I'm talking about my own feelings, then they're hearing what's going on inside, and they're understanding a feeling vocabulary. Like I'll never forget being in the shower and the twins were in the bathroom, and I had dropped a shampoo bottle and picked it up, and I heard this and I said, "What? Mommy frustrated?" And I said, "What? Mommy frustrated." And I said to my husband, "Do I growl every time I'm frustrated?" And he goes, "Yeah." You go, "Oh, I'm so frustrated." I had no idea I did that, but they had put together, oh, something happened. Mom's frustrated and she's solving the problem. And it was just this beautiful example of like, we teach so much more just by example. I never sat down and said, this is a frustrated feeling. You go grr when you're frustrated instead of breaking things, or instead of yelling and screaming. I just make a noise and I verbalize the feeling. And I had no idea I was modeling that.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So we look at family relationships and we realize how important that is for just developing attachment.
Right.
So in what other ways do you help provide like support with finding purpose and meaning and identity and value when it comes to in a family sense with security and attachment, or just as an individual?
I think it's a lot about when people are talking, whether they're talking about a conflict that happened or a problem that they have, is pointing out how their feelings are indicators of what they value. They're indicating how they're experiencing something, which then also shows us what that particular person values. And that's a way to be able to provide affirmation, but also differentiation. I see that safety really matters to your son. And then I can say to the mom, I can see how affirmation really matters to you. It matters when people show you that they appreciate you. And I can say, Dad, man, I really noticed in that example that respect matters to you a lot. Respect of your property. When your kid punches holes in the wall, it really hurts you personally because it feels like they're saying they don't appreciate you as a provider. And that's a really big deal to you. It's not just about the hole in the wall. It's about them rejecting you as a provider. I bet your son has no idea that matters so much to you that you are providing for him. So I think that gives people a clue as to like, wow, yeah, that really does make up my personality. I might really value respect more than I value somebody being flexible or somebody being patient. And so then we can see how everyone in the family operates a little bit differently, and we grow an understanding that helps us not personalize, but actually love each other well.
Wow. Yeah. So important how we all have such different values and how you have to strategically work together.
Yes.
But that takes a lot of work to figure out that whole operation.
Yes. But it is so rewarding. I mean, when people figure it out, they start to grow. And then you can see how they can really work together as a team. And I could point that out. Oftentimes parents are coming with conflicting values. Dad might value a lot of discipline and mom might value more nurturing. And I'm able to point out, I am so glad that God made you guys different, because if each one of you were just a single parent right now, your child would be missing the other half. But if you guys can learn to value that the other one is going to bring something to the table that you don't have a strength in, then it's going to be this beautiful combination that gives your child a much more well-rounded experience. But if you're putting each other down for the way that you see that, instead of appreciating, like, I'm so glad that you're you're so discipline orientated and you can help me with that piece and I can grow. And I'm so glad that I can offer you the nurturing piece that doesn't work so naturally for you. And together we are able to give our kids a bigger, broader experience than they would have had if we were singly. And that's not easy to do, but when you have somebody pointing it out in you, you see, yeah, that makes sense. It really does, that I would want my child to have as many aspects of emotional health as possible. And I can't possibly carry every single one of those strengths myself.
Yeah.
We need not only each other, but we need community. And there will be people in the community, teachers, pastors, youth leaders, friends, coaches that are able to give pieces that the parents or the family don't have within themselves. And that is not a weakness. That is intentional because we are meant to be interdependent on each other, not really independent.
Wow. Yeah. So
really
good.
Powerful.
So when we think about more of the emotional health side of all that, I know you've talked about emotional intelligence before. And what truly is emotional intelligence?
Sure. I often asked, what makes somebody emotionally healthy, or how do we promote positive mental health? And when I think about that, the concept of emotional intelligence comes to my mind because it's simple, but it's so foundational. And the history of emotional intelligence goes all the way back to 1990. It was first discovered by two researchers. And when they presented their research, it was rejected in the psychological world, which is hilarious because it was too simple.
Right.
And it took about 5 years. It was picked up by Daniel Goleman, which is kind of the name everybody knows, who wrote that book on emotional intelligence and how it might be more important than IQ. And that was 1995. And he was a journalist at the New York Times. And so he had written this book and everyone started going, wow, something more important than IQ? How is that possible? And it went crazy. I mean, it was a number one bestseller. And he sold millions of copies of books. And even for the next almost 10 years, it remained popular. And then came out the next book, Travis Bradberry co-authored, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And by then, it was really in that business world. So that term is known more in the business world, but it comes from psychology. So I just find that fascinating that people found it to be very practical. And really what I discovered was emotional intelligence is the basic foundation of pretty much everything I do in my office. So about 1991, when those researchers were coming out, there was a Christian man named Ken Sande who was coming out with this concept of peacemaking. He was recognizing that we really need help in conflict resolution, and we don't know how to do that well. And so he had developed that curriculum, and interestingly, that goes right along with emotional intelligence. And after emotional intelligence came kind of like this hot topic, he developed a Christian version of that called Relational Wisdom 360. And so he takes Goleman's 4 quadrants and adds in God to that. So his model is what I tend to use because the relationship with God, being aware of God and being engaged with God, gives me that security about who I am and what my purpose is in life. And then that feeds the rest of the cycle of the quadrants of emotional intelligence. And so those 4 are self-awareness and self-management, or in Ken Sande's model, it's engagement instead of management. So we have self-awareness, self-engagement, and then other awareness or social awareness, and other engagement or relational management. And so those 4 things are the basis of emotional intelligence: being aware of myself, knowing my feelings are my own and my own responsibility. And then emotional engagement or emotional management, self-management, is that I then can manage my own feelings. Not only are they mine, but I can have skills to manage them and regulate them. And then after I am more able to do that, I can recognize that others have their thoughts and their feelings that are separate from mine. They might be similar to mine, but they really are representative of that other person. And then I can develop skills in other management or other engagement so that I can regulate myself with that other person and even offer support to somebody who might be completely different than me. But because I'm secure in who I am and how I'm made to be in the world, I can then have an ability and an appreciation of diversity in somebody else. So to me, that simple concept is so profound and it's so practical. I can be working with somebody that's talking to me about a conflict. It could be a junior higher talking about a conflict with a friend at school. And I can stop and say, I wonder what it means for that friend when she does that. I know what it means to you. It means that she's not a good friend. You would never say something like that. She's being really critical. But I wonder what that means to her, because I think that her reactions are more about her, right? Let's practice your other awareness skills. And it completely shifts the session because the child then is recognizing, oh, Naomi says I'm valuable in how I think. She understands that I mean this by it. But that other person has just as much value as I do. So their feelings and their actions must somehow make sense too. And now we have space for two people that are very different to exist and both have value and both even possibly have positive intention in the conflict. It opens up a whole world for them.
Yeah, I can see how this emotional intelligence and even just the whole conflict side really plays into what you do in your office and in your clinic.
Yes.
So when you think about more of just emotional intelligence, it really does start with the whole being secure in yourself.
Yes.
Because you can't love others well. You can't celebrate others. And
right.
you don't know your God-given purpose and identity if you aren't internally secure with yourself first.
Right. And it's not concrete like that exactly, right? Like we are going to struggle with moments of insecurity. We aren't going to just develop our self-awareness and self-management and then be ready for the other. We're going to be in the other going, oh no, now I have to attend to myself. And so it might be that we're having a conversation and something upsets me that you say, and I need to go take a minute to work on myself to get myself back into place so that I can be present in the conversation with you again. So that's me then stopping, being self-aware, understanding it's my job to manage that, not to say you have to manage that, and then to come back so that I can engage with you. And that might look like, I'm sorry, something really came up for me right now. I think I need to work through that so that I can be more present with you about that, right? So it takes modeling that for a child to understand that's what's happening and that's how I do it. Because it is okay that we get triggered. It is okay that we still have some insecurity. It is okay that we have doubts, that we have needs, and that we have expectations or desires that we want somebody else to meet. But the reality is no one person is going to effectively meet all of our needs all of the time.
Yeah. Gosh, so good. So when I think about kind of going back with the whole what you were just saying with like, we're not going to be perfect. We're going to mess up. We're still going to have insecurities. So what are the practical things that you help parents model to their kids so that they can learn? Because it takes a lot of work to flex those mental muscles and be like, okay, when someone triggers me or there's a conflict, your response and your self-awareness, that takes a lot of work and practice. So how do you help parents better model that?
Through mistakes. And I often will tell them, growing up, the most impactful thing my dad ever did in parenting me is apologizing. I will never forget him getting upset with me and then slipping a note under my door saying, I shouldn't have yelled at you. You didn't deserve that. And I am sorry for that. I have failed you. That was more impactful than the times that he was a perfect parent. You know, and I'll use that when I'm talking with families because it is not our perfectionism that our kids are looking for. If we are perfect, then it's not okay for them to be them. And I remember sitting in my room thinking, my dad is not perfect. It's okay that I'm not. He'll understand me. And I often think that's how God is with us. He knows that he's perfect and he knows that we're not. And so he is going to be the perfect parent that my dad isn't going to be. And if my dad teaches me that, if he teaches me in my imperfection, God still will use me. Now that is embedded in me, internalized in me, that I am still valuable, even though I'm not meeting somebody's expectations. And that in not meeting somebody's expectations might be where I'm most valuable sometimes, right? And so I will share my own failures. I'll share my own experiences to model for them and then help them in their mistakes be able to use those mistakes with their kids. And that then opens the door for the kid to have mistakes and to be learning, how do I fix those as well, right? Because I actually think those are teachable moments. And I remember there's many parenting experts out there that have talked about this through the years. There are, excuse me, I have a little tickle there.
Oh, you're good.
I think back to Parenting with Love and Logic. And that program talked a lot about how to use natural consequences. And I remember those men stating to this crowd of parents, go home and pray that your kids will make mistakes, because then you get to practice. And you want to practice giving natural consequences while they're in your home, because natural consequences in adulthood are much more painful and more serious. So we don't want our children to be perfect. That's not the goal. The goal is to actually have teachable moments. And so I think when we use our own teachable moments, that actually sets the stage for them to have them as well.
Right. So then you kind of build up that way so that they can grow up and learn that self-awareness and self-management.
Yes.
So kind of looking again at that emotional intelligence model, that was kind of the first piece. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned there's social awareness and social management.
Yes.
So why is that important, and how does that kind of play into the emotional intelligence?
Mm-hmm. So just a quick little story for you. Since I've been at Valley for 20 years, I've seen a lot of people grow up and they come back in as adults. And so I love to ask, what did you find the most helpful when you saw me in junior high? You know, what stuck? Did anything stick? And what I heard over and over was that you taught me that other people's reactions were about themselves and not about me. I can't tell you how many college roommates I was able to get through because you helped me understand they're just different. Their reactions are about themselves. They didn't use language like that. Their roommates would say things like, you make me so mad. You know, you upset me when you do this. You do this wrong. Lots of you statements instead of I statements. But they knew how to turn them around into, my roommate is upset about this because she's telling me what she values and it's different than what I value. And I'm strong enough to know that I'm not bad in that I value something different. That it's okay she gets upset. And now I know how to manage that by responding to her like, oh, it sounds like when I leave dishes out, that's really upsetting to you. It must feel like I'm being disrespectful or inconsiderate. Is that right? Am I kind of understanding it? And then to be able to say, I didn't know that's how you felt that way. I guess I'm wired a little different than you. It doesn't feel disrespectful to me when you leave the dishes out. But now that I understand that about you, I can make more of an effort to put them away. I just want you to know my intent was never to be disrespectful to you as a roommate. And I want you to be able to tell me when that happens again, if there's something else that I do. And I know that you'll want me to tell you when I feel hurt or disrespected by you. I'm so glad we can have a relationship like this. You know, that totally sets the tone different than a defensive response, right? But because they understood other awareness, they could step into that person's world as separate from their own.
Wow.
It's huge.
Wow, I love this whole concept. So I'm just curious, thinking about everything we've talked about with attachment, security, why that's important in a healthy family, and then diving into emotional intelligence. How has this looked in your life and in your family? Is there anything like you want to share to just people that may be listening that are just like, wow, this gal is awesome? Like,
a lot of humbling stories, right? So I'll give you a pre and a post. My twins are now 20, so I've had, a couple decades of lots of moments here. But one time when they were getting ready for school and running late, we were about to miss the bus. And of course, I was a little bit panicked and not my shining moment as a parent. And you're going to be late. And how could you not get ready? And you have to be standing out there. You're going to miss the bus. And the moment they got onto the bus, I felt so awful that I am the worst parent in the world. I ruined their entire day, stressing out my little 5-year-olds. How awful of me to do. And when they came home, I was immediately apologetic. I am so sorry I ruined your day. And I'm so sorry I sent you off to school that way. That was not right. I should not have done that. I shouldn't have taken out my anxiety on you. And my little boy looks at me and says, "Oh, Mommy, we were fine as soon as we got on the bus. We knew it was just you."
I love it.
After I got over my humiliation, I was like, I guess that's a sign of positive attachment and emotional health. So I'm glad I at least got you that, right? And so fast forward now to last year at the age of 19, he was interviewing for internships. And when he called and said, "Mom, I got to practice interviewing. And what are strengths and weaknesses? What would you say? What do you see in me?" And I said to him, "You've really worked a lot through the years on understanding your emotions. And I would say your emotional intelligence is a strength of yours. And you're in the business world. I think they'd know what that means. And you could explain it if they didn't." So he ended up going with that. And after he had gone through 4 rounds of interviews, he had reached out to this panel member after he was chosen for the internship. And he had said to them, "Would you give me some feedback? Was there anything that kind of tipped the scale for you in my direction?" And one of them wrote back and said, "It was your emotional intelligence."
Wow.
The fact that you knew that and you understood that and it was exemplified throughout your interview process, that's what made me choose you. And so I got to see it pay off after all of these years, that he knows who he is and he knows how to separate himself from others and relate to others. And I thought, if there's one thing I get right in parenting, I hope that I am giving him security in who God made him to be and what he has to offer others, even though he's very humbly aware of how he falls short as well, right? And why he has that is because that's what was modeled to him, right? And so I just think parents have so many opportunities every day to use your failures, to use just the way that you're made. It's not like you have to go conjure up something different. You don't have to go through books and develop all of these different skills. You can use what you already naturally have. You just have to learn how to talk about it and own it for yourself. So the more you can do to work on your own emotional intelligence, the more your child will grow in theirs. And it's a lifelong process, right? And so we're all on a journey of that, and we're all supporting each other as we do that.
Wow. This has been so fun to dive into just your passion and seeing and hearing how you walk through and walk with people in this journey.
Right.
So I have just loved all of this. And my last question for you, I guess, would just be, how can parents get more of this? Say maybe they don't need to go to therapy. Maybe they don't need to go to, direct support, but you reference some books and some models. How can parents get more of this? Right.
There's a lot of information out there on emotional intelligence. I probably don't even know all of it, but my guidance would be, first, go to Relational Wisdom 360 with Ken Sande, because you'll get the full picture of that security in God. And that's what fuels the rest of the cycle. But you can Google emotional intelligence and you'll see the images of what the quadrants look like. You'll find a lot of practical information on how to apply it as well. But Ken Sande's program, he has a course that you can take on that with worksheets and examples and video clips, and it's phenomenal. So I think that's where I'd probably point people to first.
Awesome. Well, we are just very appreciative of Valley Christian Counseling and you, Naomi, and what you do for families in our region. And we are just loving getting to work with you guys. So thank you for coming in and spending time and getting to share all of these amazing practical wisdom nuggets.
Yeah, you are very welcome. And we are so thankful to be able to partnership with you guys who have that vision to go out and help promote positive mental health for our kids and families and communities. It's just phenomenal.
Yes. Well, this has been so awesome. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Wow, what a great conversation today with Naomi. When you think about the model for emotional intelligence, we all start to realize that the more work we put in for our own emotional intelligence, the more that our children will grow in theirs. And that's a lifelong process. And then we can all better understand the behaviors and perspectives of our children and become a safe place for them. All right, folks, that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening today. We really hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you next time on the DMF podcast. This is Whitney. I'm clocking out.